today we need to talk about Anne of Avonlea because I recently finished this book and the entire time I either didn't really like it in some places or was just absolutely sobbing. I read Anne of Green Gables, the first in the series, like 5 years ago, so I had to rewatch my video, do a little research to remind myself where we are. The first book ends with Anne and Gilbert and her friends coming back from teacher's college, and Gilbert gives her the school posting of Avonlea School so that she can stay home with Marilla. Already my heart. To start with, the thing that I hated the most about this book, and it was the way the characters of Davy and Dora were written. So there's a point in the story where Marilla and Anne are basically put in a position where they take in these two orphan twins who are around like 6 or 7, and they are written so strangely and I hated it. Dora is this very well-mannered, well-behaved child, just no problems with her, and Anne and Marilla don't really like her because she's boring, whereas Davy, who is written, I don't know if it's really what was intended, but he's written almost as like a sociopath, but you know, he's much more endearing because he's like more of a character. I just found it wild how dismissive they were of Dora, given the fact that both of these children were like orphaned, had a pretty rough life so far, and there seems to be, you know, more talk of the fact that Davy is the way he is because of the neglected way in which he grew up, because they had a very sick mother who couldn't be very involved in their upbringing, so he's running around with the boys, you know, didn't really learn about morals or whatever. For some reason, it's not understood that the way that Dora acts in terms of not drawing attention to herself, just doing her thing in a quiet way, couldn't also be a response to neglect and trauma. Also, for some reason, a lot of the gender politics of the book were wrapped up in Davy's feelings about what it meant to be a man. I don't know, it was just kind of weird. I mean, you know, rife with a gender politic as always. Also, some real significant anti-Indigenous stuff throughout the book, particularly again with Davy and all the boys having headdresses, and then there was the use of a apparently well-known phrase at the time that involved a slur for Indigenous women. Going along with the Davy and Dora thing and Anne's apparent dismissiveness of children at times is that when she starts working at Avonlea School, she is blatantly picking favorites of the kids. In particular, there's this one child who is a kindred spirit to her. She thinks he's a genius, just absolutely adores and loves this one specific child. And then there's another point in the book where she's literally roasting these kids because she just doesn't think they're imaginative enough. There's a point where at the beginning I was starting to get a little bit frustrated with Anne only thinking that her view of the world and how imaginative she is the only and correct way to think. And even though I completely agree, and that if everyone were a little bit more like Anne, it'd be a better place. You know what I'm saying? 100% agree. But then I started to clue into the fact, which is something I actually hadn't really thought about before, was Anne's flights of fancy, or whatever it is you want to call it, how rooted that probably is in trauma and coping mechanisms. And it started to solidify, particularly with the people that are her kindred spirits. For instance, there's this really, really beautiful chapter where at the end of the first school year, her and the child that's her fave go to the graveyard because she wants to leave flowers at Matthew's grave and he wants to leave flowers at the grave of his mother. It kind of clicked that her kindred spirits, the people that think and do the world like her, are also people who've had to deal with really intense, hard life circumstances. That's also solidified again when she meets another kindred spirit who at one point says if it weren't for my imagination, I don't know how I would live. And then it's I would consider confirmed later in the book, I think when she's talking to Diana and she talks about how, you know, if it weren't for the worlds she created in her head, she didn't know how she would have survived before she came to Avonlea. And we see her really understanding how awful her childhood really was. Oh my god, what's wrong with me? And there is so many of these beautiful passages of Anne talking about friendship and love and how her relationship with Diana is changing. And there was all these little details about her relationship to Matthew and how she's still grieving. And just my heart, I couldn't take it. Just sobbing through the whole book. I don't know what it is about this series regarding our relationship with Gilbert. He is not a huge part of the story. Like, he's always kind of there, except for that one passage. Oh my god, it was so beautiful, talking about how Gilbert's in love with Anne, but he knows that she's not ready, doesn't feel the same way, so he's like waiting and just trying to live a life that she would be proud of, and then maybe one day she'll love him, and oh my god. And we also do see that there is a changing dynamic in their relationship where Anne realizes that, like, he cute now, and she's like, oh, okay. But that's kind of it, which is fine because, like, they're 16, 17, like, they don't need to be in love with each other yet. But what I felt like was missing from the story was you don't even really read that much about their actual friendship besides the kind of times that they pop up because they're doing things together in Avonlea. Like, there's no real discussion of what they even mean to each other as friends, which leads into my kind of general criticism of the book, I guess, in that even though there are these just absolutely heart-wrenching, beautiful passages and moments in the book, most of the book doesn't actually really feel like a cohesive story like I remember the first one feeling like. Like, it's a lot more just kind of like events that are happening to get this more external picture of life in Avonlea. In order to properly discuss these books, I do feel like I need to do a lot more historical research in order to, like, fully understand the context, as well as researching more about Lucy Maud Montgomery's life, as well as adaptations, and how all of that kind of relates to Canadian literature and nationalism. Because although clearly these books are like a very touching, you know, moment in my life, I fully understand how exclusionary these can be. It's also wild to me how much international reach this has. Like, I always knew that it was an international phenomenon. Even recently, I've heard a lot of, like, British people just mention Anne of Green Gables. But I mean, I guess I read Heidi recently, and I guess it's kind of the same thing, except this is 1,000 times better than Heidi. Are you kidding me? Heidi could never, okay? I will start beef in the classic children's literature community over this. But I just had so many emotions that I just needed to talk about them. So thank you so much for being on this journey with me. I'll see you soon. Bye!